back to Action Hour with the Whidbey Environmental Action Network. This episode is part 2 of a 2-part series delving into the critical areas protected under the Growth Management Act. So let's go. Okay, fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas.
Okay, so what are fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas?
Yes.
Well, originally they were taken to mean streams and species that are listed by the federal government as endangered or threatened. Mm-hmm. Since then, it has expanded thanks to various efforts by various people, and now generally includes both streams, rare species, including rare plants, and is now being expanded to include riparian areas. Those are the areas. Riparian means of the river, more or less. So those areas that are bordering streams. Okay. Previously, they'd been sort of protected as buffers for the streams, but now there's a big push to protect them in and of themselves, because again, they are incredibly valuable, not only in terms of what they do in terms of protecting the streams or the rivers within them, but also in providing habitat. You know, like almost every kind of wildlife you can mention, you can name, uses riparian areas.
Okay.
The Department of Fish and Wildlife has now completed a project where they've mapped all the soil polygons.
What's a soil polygon?
Okay, soil polygon. Well, you got an area of soil, you draw a line around it, you got a polygon, unless it's a really, really round or maybe an ellipse.
Okay.
You map those, and then based on that soil type, you can go over to the forestry people and say, how tall would a tree be that would grow there? And some places that might be an alder that grows 90 feet tall. Other places it might be a Doug fir that its site potential there for at a certain period of time might be 150 feet, or a red cedar, which might be 125 feet. And they've done that. And so now counties and cities are being encouraged, quote unquote, to preferably make them critical areas in and of themselves, but if not, to at least protect the streams based on those numbers. Now, this gets more complicated than it sounds initially for various reasons. Like, you know, rarely does somebody who has some land, rarely is that soil polygon right along the stream exactly the same everywhere. There might be different kinds of soil with different site potential tree heights. So how do you average that out? Do you average it out? How do you average it out? And we could get into the weeds there, but that's still pretty much up in the air. Now, I fully expect that some jurisdiction, some county or city is going to say, well, we're going to not protect riparian areas for themselves. And then some starry-eyed activist like me is going to sue them or make a case against them saying, you have to protect critical areas based on the best available science. The best available science is this area is so valuable for fish and wildlife that you need to protect it. And the way you need to protect it is by.
Right. And so, I mean, in that statement, what I'm hearing from that, which is a good thing, I think, is that as the best available science improves, there's more and more evidence to support protecting more areas because we learn more about the function of a place and whether or not, like, for example, I know Marianne has mentioned to me that, or maybe you have, that, like, you know, we don't have streams on the island that we can see, but there are all of the watershed has all of these little streamlets that are happening in a lot of places. Those streamlets have like, what is the, like, salmon, the baby salmon eggs or whatever. What is it called? Smolts. Yeah. And so that we wouldn't see it, but we know that actually there are places that are a part of fish habitat and a part of the life cycle of that fish. And, you know, Yeah, I don't know. I would have never even considered that, right? Because I can't see it with my eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, humans have, especially modern Western humans, have this funny idea that the only thing important to wildlife is the place where they screw and rear their young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But actually, just think about it for yourself. I mean, you can have a lot of fun in the bedroom, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to stay there all the time. You're going to go out to eat. You're going to, go out and take a walk. You're going to, these other things as well. You're going to go outside somewhere and, take a dump, preferably not right where you, eat and sleep. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so yeah, you have to look at the entire life cycle of the organism, and most vertebrates use riparian areas at one stage or another of their life cycle.
Mm-hmm. So fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas could account for a lot of different types of ecosystems.
Yes, good. And so, for instance, in Island County on Whidbey,
Mm-hmm.
those prairie areas
Yeah.
sort of designated, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here, but are sort of designated as critical areas,
Mm-hmm.
as they didn't used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Trend here certainly has been that things have usually only gotten protected when the county has been forced to protect them.
Right. Right. But they are critical areas because they are wildlife habitat areas of specific designation. And
about plants being wildlife area.
Ah, yes, are plants wildlife? This is an interesting question that has still not had a legal determination. Back in the teens, right, Island County was going to update its critical areas ordinance along with the rest of the comp plan, 2016, and refused to designate prairies and refused to designate rare plants. Okay. Anyway, they were just going to rely on their plant list from like 20 years before that had not been updated, and still really hasn't. But they weren't going to protect prairies in and of themselves unless they were associated with an endangered species.
Okay.
Mainly an endangered animal species. I argued that plants are wildlife
Mm-hmm.
in and of themselves, and the county argued no, they're not. And so I ended up going to University of Washington and going through every dictionary they had in the library, which was an interesting day. And I traced back to the first use of the term wildlife, the single word wildlife, in American English in a dictionary was in the I think it was 26 or 29 Webster's. And they did not have that. I found a reference to it, but I did not find that dictionary. And this wonderful librarian saw me doing all this with all these dictionaries and said, "What are you doing?" And I told her what I was, doing, that the meaning of the term wildlife was an issue in a legal case. And she said, "Just wait here," went back to her office, came back 10 minutes later with that dictionary.
Really?
It's that back in the early aughts, when computers came online, everything's going to be on computers. And the library started throwing out their dictionaries right and left, including that one, all their old dictionaries. And she, being a librarian, could not stand that.
Yes.
Rescued a bunch of them and kept them in her office.
Oh my God, that's such a good story. So wait, what was the definition?
Dictionary agreed with me that plants are wildlife, plants, animals, living wild. I mean, that was the definition. In American English, there's kind of a split here where one view is that it comes from the old term game. And the other view is that wildlife includes everything. Recent dictionaries, you're going to find tend more and more to just include, every kind of wildlife. Investors went off on a tangent back in the 50s and 60s where they were saying wild animals.
Right.
So this was a major question in this case that neither the hearings board nor the Court of Appeals or the Superior Court wanted to get in at all. They decided on totally other grounds. But I briefed the hell out of that.
I've been reading Silent Spring for the first time, which, is fun. But there was a part that she, in her introduction, that I like sent this quote to my friend who is a librarian. It was her acknowledgments. She says, quote, "Every writer of a book based on many diverse facts owes much to the skill and helpfulness of librarians."
Yes. Librarians are my heroes.
Yeah, me too.
Librarians so many times, when I'm sitting there lost, where do I find that? How do I find that? Where is it? They just, hey, try this. And they don't always lead me to it, but they'll get me going in some direction or other. So
yeah, I have a similar affection and affinity for librarians. I think libraries are some of the safest places on earth. All right. So what else do you want to say about fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas? Is there anything else that the public needs to know about them, their designation, what they cover, what's their deal?
Maps, again, in all these cases, the maps are never determinative. Rather, the designation criteria is determinative. So if something shows up on a map and you go out there and it doesn't meet the, the requirements for what it is, then it's not. But on the other hand, if you go someplace that isn't mapped and it meets those requirements, then it is.
Right.
So I would like to point out that some of the critical areas that we've talked about are relatively knowable.
Yes.
Okay? If you know what to look for, you can see a wetland. You may or may not be able to see a critical recharge area.
Yep.
Unless you happen to be a restoration ecologist or a wildlife bio, you are not necessarily going to recognize a fish and wildlife habitat conservation area.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to. I know that for sure. Like, I would have no idea what I was looking at.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where we go with that. Let's see, frequently flooded and geohazard areas. I mean, most of us can figure out it's very steep.
Okay, is that what it means? So when we're talking about geologically hazardous areas, are we talking about like bluff faces? Are we talking about steep slopes? What are we talking about?
We are talking about, okay, generally it has to be steep. Okay. But also it has to be unstable.
Okay. Steep and unstable.
Yeah, so there are some places that are quite steep now, not so much here on Whidbey, but around Deception Pass and around the further north islands, you've got those great big rock walls.
Yeah.
They're steep, but they're pretty stable.
I have climbed up one of them.
Good. Yeah. Anyway, what we're talking about is steep and unstable.
Okay.
You look at it cross-eyed and it's going to land on top of you.
Okay. And they are geologically hazardous areas are critical areas because they are dangerous.
Well, they're dangerous to people, obviously, and they're pretty much dangerous to wildlife. Yeah, they are a hazard to life and limb.
Okay.
And
I'm curious about that though, because they're like, unlike all of the other critical areas, that's the one where I'm like, are you trying to create zero net loss or do no harm in a geologically hazardous area? And if so, like, what's the purpose or how do you protect them?
and this one becomes a huge legal tangle because of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Nor shall private property be taken for public purposes without just compensation. And we've got a lot of people buying bluff property and then being very upset and unhappy when the county says you are out of your tree to want to build a house here.
Clear for view.
Yes, or as Steve says, to clear it for a view. That's we see a lot of that.
Okay, so that's like specifically designated here because people want to build homes or clear areas that are just way too close to the edge of a bluff a lot of the time.
Or on the bluff itself.
Or on the bluff
I've
itself.
seen it.
So this is like protecting people from themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
That specific one. Okay. And so
Yeah. Now, geohazard areas may or may not be obvious because just because it's a bluff, some bluffs are relatively stable and some bluffs, don't look cross-eyed. And that may not be obvious to somebody who wants to do something on them. So we've got a handful of geologists around here, and I read their reports fairly regularly, and I'm getting better at it than I want to be. I'm beginning to recognize these things that, well, actually, there's some people who are doing a study in Langley right now. The last report, they were 60% finished, and they're going to be doing another report this next week. And they were looking at things that I knew if you walk on First Street in Langley and then Wharf Street goes on down to the water, at the place where First Street and Wharf Street meet, there's a railing. You look over that railing, it goes straight down. There is no slope at all. In fact, it's undercut. And these people in their report point out that there are stress cracks in the sidewalk on First Street and that, big red stars, alarm, alarm, alarm.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The thing is that these geologically hazardous areas, these people this is their job, and they are pointing out the geohazards specifically on the bluffs in Langley. And then, Langley can figure out what are we going to do about it.
Right. But there's somebody who's saying like this may be a geologically hazardous area.
Oh, no, they're saying this absolutely.
They're saying it is. Okay. Okay. And that's like that's a pretty good example because that's like right in the middle of town and it may or may not have been geologically hazardous when they paved the road there.
Well, as a matter of fact, once upon a time when the Doghouse was a functioning tavern, there was a very large blown up photo on the wall in there that showed the street on the other side of the Doghouse and those buildings on First Street and the baseball field that was on the other side of that street. So what we see is in the last 100 years is that was like early 1900s, I think, that photo, is that the bluff has retreated.
Okay, yeah.
And, whole
sections are gone.
Have disappeared. And I was here in, I think it was 73, 74 when the seawall got built. And that was an attempt. It was becoming obvious to that generation of people, it's moving back. And the buildings on First Street were in danger. And they're still in danger. And two of the property owners have actually submitted a permit application to build a bulkhead basically under their buildings, which is an interesting one. But anyway,
yeah, it's funny because it seems like, areas like that when we've been talking that there's a lot of interesting intersections on the coastline with these critical areas designations. Like the people who have their homes on the shorelines are the first to probably experience saltwater intrusion. Also, they're most likely to be in a geologically hazardous area, whether if their house is beneath a bluff or on a bluff or, you know,
Yep.
whatever that may be. And I know that technically because of the way that waves are designated, it's not a frequently flooded area. But
however, they are likely to go underwater.
They are likely to go underwater. Yeah. Right. Which brings me to frequently flooded areas.
Yeah. Although one last point, Steve, question of you. The hydraulic coastal lagoons with the houses on top of them, are those geohazards? They're not. Okay. So there is this.
Behind.
Yeah. There is this practice that was finally outlawed in the late 60s, I believe, which is that you take a barge out on the water and you take this huge high-powered pump and you blast water at the face of the bluff, which then caves in and fills in the lagoon below, and then you build houses on it.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that. We mentioned this in a previous episode when we were talking about the Shoreline Management Act, because this practice was part of the reason why that act came about, right? It was like people were really upset about that.
So Steve says that the houses on the fill on top of the lagoon are not necessarily in a geohazard area, but the bluff that got hydraulic sure is.
Right. 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 Which is like the creation of a geologically hazardous area by people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So frequently flooded areas, that one is a real oddball one because indeed, by bizarre definition, water going into your house, salt water coming ashore and well, it's not ashore anymore, you're underwater, is not considered flooded. There are areas that are considered frequently flooded. Now, in part, at least on Whidbey, our shorelines have been really, really altered. There was a very ambitious ag extension agent here. The date I've seen most often is 1917. And he organized farmers around the shorelines to build dikes.
What's a dike? What's a dike?
It's a raised area of land, long and skinny, tall enough to hold the water back. And
okay. Is that different than the spit in Deer Lagoon?
That's a dike.
That's okay. So that's technically a dike. Okay. So Deer Lagoon. Okay. Got it.
It's protected by a dike.
Oh, okay. Steve corrects me. So what? Shore Avenue is a spit?
Yeah.
But if you go past the end of Shore Avenue, you're on the dike.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So the problem is, of course, that dikes work for a while, but behind the dike seems to me is a frequently flooded area. This is an area that used to be a part of the ocean and has been blocked off. And they have terrible flooding problems. Isn't that interesting? So basically, frequently flooded areas are places that, be smart. Don't build there.
Right. Well, does this include like places where people have built, I don't know, homes along a river, and when they have more rainfall in a year, and
so
they predictably have rainfall that comes and then floods the riverbanks? Is that frequently flooded?
Yeah. So on the mainland, there are much more obvious ones. I mean, you hear constantly the Skagit River floods, the Stillaguamish floods. All of our mainland rivers have flood plains, and those flood plains are frequently flooded.
Right. Right. And so in terms of it being a critical area that's protected, and with the idea that of no net loss or doing no harm, what does that mean for a frequently flooded area?
Okay. What it means is that you don't build in a frequently flooded area for obvious reasons that you're going to have a problem. But what happens is that those frequently flooded areas are part of the riverine system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't predict it's going to happen on Monday morning, but you can predict that sometime during the season it's going to happen.
Right.
And that part of the system needs to be retained. And building on it, creating impervious surfaces, et cetera. A classic area is South Pierce County, where you've got I can't even remember which rivers are down there, but I know the Chehalis River it floods constantly. That's further south. That's I think Thurston County, and the people have chosen for very stupid reasons to put large warehouses and industrial areas in those floodplains. Oh, but it was so flat. It was so easy to build. Mm-hmm. And then you have to turn around and figure out, how am I going to protect this impervious surface and all of these structures and all of this stuff that is of value to me from the water, which clearly, foreseeably, and very predictably is going to happen here.
Right. Right. It's interesting because all of these, like, you know, when we're talking about critical areas and we're talking about their protection under the Growth Management Act, it seems like what they need to be protected from is development. Yep. Okay. Yep. That, like, so I'm curious, how do developers get around critical areas protections? Like, because people do build in these places. I mean, they're not supposed to, right? But I think one of the things that I'm noticing when we're having this conversation is that if a realtor or a person has a patch of land that they want to sell and there's nothing on it, that like, unless you have somebody a consultant come out and do a test to see if it's a wetland, and unless it's mapped already as a critical recharging area, and unless you understand visually or you're a biologist and you're like, oh, this is a fish and wildlife habitat conservation area, like it would be very easy to like ignore all of these things and build anyway.
So I happen to have a whole pile of applications that came in this last week that I am reviewing. And let me see, 328, that would be the pile. Mm-hmm. So here we have somebody, I'm looking through all of the paperwork that they had to submit. They had to do a field indicators worksheet.
Okay.
And that's an Island County special. That's where Island County differs from the rest of the state. Mm-hmm. And the field indicators worksheet will help you and the county determine if a wetland or wetland buffer is on your property. Mm-hmm. Applicants for permits for single-family residential uses must either complete this worksheet or, at their option, hire a wetland professional.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. All other applicants, commercial or non-residential, must do the latter, which is to hire a wetland professional, if the county verifies that the development proposal is for land that contains or is affected by a wetland. You'll notice this is slightly circular. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to hire somebody to tell you there's a wetland there if we think there's a wetland there.
Right. So if you think there's a wetland there. So, but if you don't think there's a wetland there, if you just are like, I don't think this is a wetland.
Well, if the county verifies.
Okay, so the county has to verify your claim that there is or is not wetland there.
So that's, you know, the whole worksheet, blah-de, blah-de, blah. Is there ever standing water on the property, et cetera? And I'm not going to go through the whole thing here.
But this is like back to kind of like what I was thinking about when we were talking about the SEPA checklist, is that people are self-identifying stuff.
Oh, very much so. And as I've said, I am vicious when I review SEPA checklists. Mm-hmm. This particular one is disarmingly illiterate. Okay, so here's the master application for clearing and grading and for timber harvest.
Hmm.
So, okay, they're going to log, they're going to, okay, permits and reports required. The clearing and grading permit requires a SEPA environmental checklist and an erosion and sedimentation plan.
Right. Right. So in the process of having to do a SEPA checklist, you would determine whether or not there were critical areas on the land that you were looking to develop.
So, and almost any development is going to involve a clearing and grading permit.
Right. Okay. So in the process of any kind of development, you need a clearing and grading permit. And in the process of getting that permit, you're going to go through the SEPA checklist that we discussed in episode 3. And that is going to help determine whether or not there are critical areas on the property that you're looking to develop on.
Oh, here, this is the application checklist for clearing and grading activities. Grading and clearing on steep slopes, 40%. For work on a steep slope or geologically hazardous area, submit a geotech report.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Let's see. Or if you're within 100 feet of the top or toe of an unstable bluff, submit the SEPA checklist and an erosion and sedimentation control plan.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So there are like additional reports that people have to submit in this process. I'm curious, this is unrelated. Well, it's related to this whole topic, but I have a few more questions on my list that I want to make sure I get to. And one, because you mentioned clearing and grading, and that involves logging often. I'm curious why, and this may be a really dumb question, but why aren't forests considered critical areas?
That's not a dumb question. It's one that we've been wanting to beat over the head we've been working on this for years and years. And it is because of the history of Washington State and Oregon Territory and the entire westward movement that the perception in the 1800s when white folks made it this far was it goes on forever. It's never ending. Mm-hmm. It is a resource. It is for us to take as much as we want, as fast as we can. Mm-hmm. And it is still, we talk about natural resources.
Right.
And it is seen as a thing for us to take and use. It is not seen as an entity in and of itself with any value.
Right. And having its own ecological value and function, having its own system that deserves protection, and also that in its current form, it is a natural resource that's providing value because it's helping us process our air.
Yeah. So actually, some types of forests are critical areas. Remember Fish and Wildlife Habitat Conservation Areas.
Yes.
And the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Priority Habitat Species Program identifies various ecosystems that are considered, to be their priorities, which then are the counties and cities must consider, including those as critical areas. And among those are, like ancient forests, for example.
Okay.
Also in Island County, Washington Natural Heritage Program, rare ecosystems are actually designated as critical areas because I kind of forced them to do that. Mm-hmm. I did force them to do that.
Okay, good.
And that also includes some kinds of forests. For example, on the coast, where Fort Casey, and Camp Casey are.
Yeah.
The forests in between those areas. Trees don't look very big, but in fact, that is a very rare type of forest. There are only 4, my memory serves me right, only 4 examples of that particular kind of forest remaining.
Wow.
So some kinds of forests are, but forests generally, no, because trees grow pretty good around here. You turn your back and there's trees
Right, right. So because it's currently plentiful, it's not considered a critical area unless it's protecting.
Just like wildlife, just like wildlife, just like, animals. Nobody really generally protects a species, any kind of species, when it's common. It only gets protected when it's rare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have to fight like hell to protect it.
Well, okay, and there's no consideration of community types.
Well, the Natural Heritage Program is.
Yeah.
And actually, the Priority Habitats and Species Program sort of gets towards that.
Okay, so things become critical when they become a rarity in some cases, like we have to reach a critical point with forests for them to become critical areas.
Where society functions, basically, is use it, abuse it, and if it gets really rare, then somebody notices that and raises a fuss. If they raise enough of a fuss, and the fuss they raise and the other people they can get to help them raise a fuss is sufficient to outweigh whatever economic impact there is of not exterminating or extirpating the particular plant or animal or community, then it'll get protected, sort of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So of the critical areas that are currently designated, which are the most under threat?
Which are the most under threat?
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking here. I would say most under threat are certainly, wetlands and any kind of fish and wildlife habitat area.
Mm-hmm.
Any habitat anywhere, really, because we're in the middle of an extinction event.
Right.
Almost entirely by human actions, either directly by destruction of habitat and alteration of the landscape, or somewhat indirectly, for instance, the climate change.
Right.
Release of persistent pollutants.
Right. So like habitat in general is under threat, all habitat, and then wetlands in particular also.
Yeah. I mean, there's really no place on the planet you can say is not under threat now.
That's true. Okay. So yeah, but in that way, then like so much that so much more would be okay. So this actually goes to a question that I had, which is, are there other ecosystems that aren't designated or protected as critical areas that should be? Right. You're saying everything is under threat, but just as we talked about forests, like there are some forests based on the current designations of critical areas that fall under the designation of critical areas, but forests themselves are not, because in the state of Washington, we can see trees, and so we consider them to be plentiful. But like, what else isn't designated that should be?
Right.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say the way the county has gone about doing prairies, which they, were able to do and got legal approval to do, I'd say that's fairly inadequate.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of issues that are arising and are going to arise in the future as a result of being in an extinction crisis that aren't really dealt with by this system, where, basically you've got critical areas more or less off limits. It's out and out destruction, but everything else is fine. We see applications. For instance, there was one the other day, I think it was 4 acres. Somebody wants to build a house and they want to grade the entire property and convert it to lawn from forest.
Really?
There's really nothing in Island County code that explicitly says you can't do that.
Wow. 4 acres of lawn?
Sure.
It's 4.8 acres.
4.8.
And that's like not for agricultural use. That's not for like livestock, just because they want to like ride around on their lawn tractor.
It's very unclear. It's on a bluff too. Owned by.
Oh, okay. So maybe they want to see the view.
So this is one that I'm reviewing, and It's a 4.8 acre parcel on the east side of Camino Island. And it was logged between 60 and 80 years ago.
Okay.
And the owner admits that at some point in the future, he intends to build a house there, but his permit is a clearing and grading permit to clear the entire 4.8 acres. And the entire SEPA checklist, I mean, I was screaming by the time I was done because, you know, part of SEPA says that you have to consider future actions as well as present actions. Well, at present, all we're going to do is clear and grade it and turn it into a lawn. And, you know,
yeah, but future, right? But the intent of that action, right? Like clearing and grading 5 acres. What is the future action implied?
Yeah, and time and again throughout the whole checklist, we won't need any electricity for this phase, and no, we won't be drilling a well for this phase. And I think I'm going to be able to get them on that part. That you have to say what your future intent is. Also, it asks how are you going to deal with runoff? I mean, you're converting forest to, and lawn actually is considered impervious surface.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why is lawn considered impervious surface?
Because it won't absorb.
It doesn't absorb. Okay. And why doesn't it absorb?
I'm not sure.
Okay. It just doesn't have as good of an absorption.
Yeah. Okay. The thing is that with trees, you've got acres literally of needles or leaves on any given tree if you laid them out all flat. And all of that catches the rain and slows it down so that by the time it hits the ground, it is moving very, very slowly.
Oh, so it's about like the rate of the rainfall because of the surfaces that catch it on the way down. But then also you have trees that are probably sucking up a lot of the water because we're utilizing it. And in the lawn, each like little blade of grass doesn't require as much water.
So in most of the calculations I've seen, you're allowed to give it a 50%, impervious rate rather than its 100% impervious.
Okay.
But this particular instance, yes, they're going to clear cut the whole thing and grade it and turn it into lawn. And as for runoff, well, there's forested land on 3 sides of it. It's one of those rules that you can't count on somebody else to perform the service on your land.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, what happens when the neighbors decide they want to cut theirs all flat?
Right. And in this case, it's like there isn't consideration of the fact that there are animals and plants that are living in this 5 acre ecosystem that will be displaced when it's
that nobody cares about that part. I mean, I care about that, but I see no point in raising it. I can raise the issue of piecemealing the SEPA checklist. I can raise the issue of they haven't considered their runoff appropriately.
Right. Yeah. You're considering the ways based on the current way the policy is written that you can see that they're not in compliance with that policy, but it's not considering, because we consider forests to be plentiful and we're not considering the animals and plants that live in the forest. We're not considering what cutting down 5 acres does to them at all.
Yeah, and what bothers me more than anything is that they keep referring to it as mature forest.
Which it's not, because if it was logged 80 years ago, it's not mature forest, right?
It's starting to get characteristics of mature forest. And what I haven't seen is a statement of what's in the understory.
Also, isn't mature forest valuable to keep?
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Ecologically, And nowadays there are reports and graphs and charts on the increased absorption of CO2 by trees, as they grow older.
Mm-hmm.
That the older the tree, the more CO2 it's absorbing.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and they're holding the soil, and about a million other things that the trees are doing for us. And I don't want to go into the whole concept of land ownership, but land ownership is a package of things that you are able to do. The usual one in this culture is you're able to exclude other people. You can put up a no trespassing sign, and that means nobody can come on this land because you own it.
Right. And it's not just people, it's also animals too.
Yeah. You can put up a great big fence, and years and years ago, we had a big hoorah down on Glendale Road, Holst Road, Glendale Road. Somebody bought a piece of property that included a chunk of the creek, and they put up a great big fence along the edge of the road. And that fence crossed a deer trail. The deer would come across the road and down the deer trail down to the creek and wherever else they were going to go. And as a result of that fence, deer were milling in the road trying to get down to the creek, but their pathway to the creek was blocked off. And other people who used that road started getting very upset because they were, it's right at the bottom of a big hill. So they were bombing down the hill, and all of a sudden here's this mob of deer, and there were a lot of accidents. And
it's a deer jam. They were just like bottlenecked. They didn't know where to go.
Exactly. And it turned into this great big legal question because this particular landowner was a true jerk, and he absolutely asserted his right to put up that great big chain link fence. And he and the county had some serious wrangles over it. And I think eventually the fence came down, but I think it came down by midnight removal by parties unknown.
I think it's interesting to talk about private property and to think about critical areas with the lens that a critical area is only critical once it becomes rare or needs to be conserved because we've destroyed so much that we have to really think about it. And I understand that when somebody is considering new development, that they have to go through this process of a SEPA checklist and different types of worksheets that they have to fill out. But what about people who live on properties that are already in critical areas where they built on it before this law was in effect? I mean, there are plenty of houses on the island that predate 1990.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the old grandfather clause. We all know the damage is happening, but they're grandfathered in. And I watched one it was happening right across Edgecliff from me, that the place was an utter disaster, and it was much too close to the bluff and a whole lot of other things that were wrong with it. And they couldn't get a permit to tear it down and build a new house. And we watched as they took it apart piece by piece. And eventually there was just the roof standing on these posts, and they built the whole house under the roof. And then they tore off the roof and put the new roof on.
That is a loophole if I have ever heard one.
And it took, months and months. And we just kind of watched, I mean, it was...
Well, it speaks to the tension between what we know to be true about what our Earth needs from us and the system that we have in place for economic prosperity.
Well, the thing is, it's short-term economic prosperity.
Yes. Well, maybe in your lifetime, maybe only for the next 20 years. I mean, that's when we talk about shoreline houses. It's the same thing, right? Like in the short term, you build a bulkhead, it saves your house for, 10 years, maybe enough time for you to flip it and sell it to somebody else and you make money. But in the long term, it's not a sustainable place to be living. And as we learn more also, and as the world changes at a much more rapid rate because of climate change, it's like, I think people are coming up against the realities of the fact that we are not separate from nature.
Well, I think that mutuality is coming very hard to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying this for so many years, that environmentalism is a very selfish activity. It's, I'm saving my own behind, thank you. And if I have to save the world, it's my butt that's getting saved by saving the world. By the way, have you seen the latest paper, the first house that is being lifted up, put up on 11-foot stilts in the Mutiny Sands, I think it is, neighborhood.
Oh, my mom mentioned this article to me, but I haven't read it yet. They're putting a house on stilts, and this is the first one in Washington State, or
not in Washington, but yes, residents lift homes to protect against sea level rise.
Yeah.
It's real. It's happening, and I've got one I'm reviewing over on Camino that's really strange in this regard. The house sits at the top of a 70-foot bluff, and it sits back from the bluff. They've got a 70-foot stairway going down the face of the bluff.
Terrifying.
Quite incidentally, it seems that Cascade Natural Gas has a gas pipeline that goes down the edge of their property, down the bluff on their property, and then out under Saratoga Passage to Whidbey Island.
No way.
Evidently. I mean, that's what I'm reading in the paperwork on this one. And the Cascade Natural Gas did this great big rock pile around their, from the base of the bluff out to the water to protect their line. But water is stronger than that. So they've had, a lot of erosion. Their beach is coming apart, and the base of the stairs were going to float away. And so they did I suspect they weren't been doing something temporary when they did it, but the county told them this is temporary. And the county is requiring them to take out it's like a wooden board bulkhead around the base of the stairs. And the county is requiring them to take it out. And they're doing soft shore armoring instead. And I was reading the geologist's report yesterday, and they say that, the rock pile around that gas line is definitely part of the cause of this erosion. But, and the thing is, the gas company has an easement on these people's property. And so they can't move the gas company's boulders. So even though the boulders are a cause of the problem, they're going to do soft shore armoring. They're going to be bringing in lots of logs, and they're going to anchor those logs. And I don't think that these people are the world's greatest environmentalists. I think the county, sort of caught them doing something that wasn't supposed to be done. But I think it's it looks like it's going to be turning out for the best, depending on how it's implemented. But I find it a very interesting situation.
That is an interesting situation. And it kind of leads to the next question I have, which is, what can we do better to protect critical areas?
Number one, become aware of them. As most people it's not on anybody's radar. Oh, well, a few of us, it's on our radar.
Mhm.
But people need to know what these are, why they are what they are. Well, why they are considered critical, I should say,
Mhm.
and why it's important to take care of them. And again, you're covering your own butt.
Mhm.
If you take care of the wetlands, then we will have, the wetlands will absorb all of that water.
Mhm.
That will reduce flooding. That will increase aquifer recharge.
Mhm.
Same with reducing impervious surface is going to improve aquifer recharge. We all drink water. We need the water in that aquifer.
Mhm.
So all of these things, I take it back to you're covering your own butt. But in order to do that, you need to recognize these things and, act appropriately.
Another man up in the pulpit in the state house, head of the table with a black pen, scratching egos, talking too loud, externalize every outcome, every warm gun, every profit, and kneeling down to the flashing numbers, the NASDAQ, the cold constructs, running backwards to just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. I'm learning every lesson that
This
our mothers
podcast is a
tried to
production of the
teach us.
Whitby Environmental Action Network and is made possible by our generous donors. Produced, edited, and mixed by me, Amanda Bullis. Special thanks to Marianne and Steve for their years of service through action and for lending their voices to this podcast. To WEEN's Executive Director Marnie Jackson and our board for their leadership. Special thanks to Whitby musician and WEEN board member Nathaniel Talbot for letting us use his track Intuition from the album Animal, available on Bandcamp.
With a straight face, knowing damn well there's a war being waged back at the workplace. Every day on your paycheck, a volume of confidence against the idea of your body being put into your own hands. So please don't hold it, please don't hold it, please don't hold it back. Unleash the power, the straight logic of compassion. What I need now ain't that old religion or the cold hard facts. Just need a woman's intuition, get us on track. Just need a woman's intuition, get us on track. Stepping out of the shadow of a false man's allegory, slowly erasing that old violence from the story. Recoupling emotion, slow emotion to intelligence, granting the planters, healers, teachers, feelers a new relevance. What I need now ain't that old